The stakes are high. For you, it may be a once-in-a-lifetime trip you've been dreaming of, or if you're returning and think you know the traps, there's still much that can actually go wrong when heading to Alaska. An Alaskan cruise often costs twice the price of a Caribbean one. Excursions are phenomenally expensive, so it's got to be right when you go. I'm Gary Bembridge, and here's 7 things that I have found are essential to a successful Alaska cruise. Some I learned from making mistakes, and others from those around me that I saw people keep making. First thing people trip up on is choosing the cruise, as all look very similar. On the surface, there are just 2 itineraries, and they share 3 key features, but it's much more complicated than it seems if you want to get the best trip. The 2 itineraries are either the Inside Passage, which are round trips, usually out of Vancouver or Seattle, or one-way trips between the north and the south, between ports near Anchorage, Whittier or Seward, and Vancouver or Seattle. Both of these share 3 key features. First of all, they're usually 7 nights long. Secondly, they call on the same 3 key ports, Skagway, Juneau, and Ketchikan, although some may use Sitka. And thirdly, they include 1 or more days of scenic glacier cruising in places like the Hubbard Glacier or Glacier Bay. However, look at the itinerary closely to check how many days will be spent in Alaska versus just getting there and back. For example, Inside Passage cruises out of Vancouver or Seattle have 2 days at sea getting to and from Alaska. The north to south I recently did on Majestic Princess had only 1 day that we were not in Alaska. Now I recommend you go on a cruise calling on Skagway, Ketchikan and Juneau, as this is where the best excursions and activities are. So make sure you have all 3 of them on your itinerary, but then look carefully at how long the ship will be in each port. Some ships are in 1 or more ports for really limited time. So for example, I saw Discovery Princess spent just 5 hours in Juneau and Celebrity Solstice just 4 hours in Skagway. You want to have as much time as possible in each port to do the best or even multiple activities in each to get the most of being there. Taking all of this into account, I preferred my north to south cruise as it had just 1 day not in Alaska, got me to the Hubbard Glacier. I experienced the incredible Glacier Explorer train from Anchorage down to Whittier, which I flew into. It went to Glacier Bay, and it also avoided the more complicated and slow Vancouver embarkation, which has both Canadian and US immigration checks and can be a real nightmare. However, for first-timers, an Inside Passage is a simpler way of doing it because there's less flights and easier logistics, and you still, of course, see an incredible side to Alaska. Now, no matter which you choose, a mistake I made the first time I went on an Alaska cruise was not to add in pre- and post-cruise stays. First of all, it's a really long way to go. It took me 9.5 hours flight from the UK, and then I had to get up to Anchorage, and then there was an 8-hour time difference. Now, many US travelers spend 6 or more hours getting to the cruise, and they face time differences too as well. It's worth having days to recover and to be really on top form for an Alaska cruise. It's hectic, it's tiring, there's many excursions, lengthy excursions, there's full days out on deck watching for wildlife, looking at glaciers and scenery. So consider adding also a land-based trip to see more of Alaska and certainly a chance to see wildlife close. For example, to Denali, where lines like Princess and Hollow America own lodges, operate scenic trains and scenic buses. One thing many worry about getting wrong is when to go. I don't think there is a wrong time. The season is short. It's roughly 5 months from May to September. It's always in demand and it's always going to be pricey. It's likely to rain pretty much any time you go, and the weather will fluctuate from being chilly right through to being warm pretty much all year round as well. Now personally, I like the beginning of the season, May or June, before it gets busy, certainly during school vacation time later in the year. If you do want to see wildlife, then the peak months of kind of late June through to August is especially good, particularly once the salmon run has started and the bears really come out and are visual. But on my May and June cruises, I saw whales, I saw bears, I saw sea otters, and loads of birds. If you can go early in the season or at the very end, it's likely to be slightly less busy and definitely a little bit less expensive. Although some businesses and some tours may not be open very early on and towards the very end of the season. Although any time you go is going to be busy. There are around 30 ships sailing in Alaska in the season, and with only those limited ports, there will always be 5 to 6 ships in each port when you call. The third thing people ask me often is what is the right line to go to Alaska with, and should they go with a line they like, or one of the lines like Holland America that has been cruising there for over 75 years, or Princess that's been there for over 50 years. There is a lot of choice, as pretty much every single line from ultra luxury to mass resort style lines is either based in Alaska for the season or does some cruises in Alaska. So you should be able to go on your usual favorite. However, my advice is the itinerary should be the more important consideration. And I recommend at least consider going on a line that will take you into Glacier Bay. Going there should trump your usual line preference in my view. It is so amazing, and going to Alaska without seeing it, I believe, is a big miss. Glacier Bay only allows 2 large cruise ships in per day, and only a few lines have access. Holland America and Princess have the most access, followed by Norwegian Cruise Line. Very few other lines can offer you Glacier Bay. Of course, Holland America and Princess are traditional, classic, premium cruise lines with the reputation for being more staid and possibly older guests. However, this gets turned on its head in Alaska based on my experiences. On my Alaska cruises on both Holland America and Princess, I saw much younger and much more varied age ranges than usual, dramatically more multi-generational families than usual, many kids and teens of all ages, and little attention to the usual more formal dress code. Even on formal nights, people dressed informally. Even if you choose your favorite line, do not expect it, in my view, to be the normal crowd and on-board vibe. People choose the line more for their itinerary and budget than in any other region from what I've seen. More than in any other region, I also get asked if a balcony cabin is a must for Alaska, and if it's a mistake not to have one. Now, if you can, stretch to a balcony cabin, as it's particularly good when you're doing scenic cruising days. These are long days, and it's great to be in your cabin and out on the balcony watching it go by. Some of the best views and photographs I've got were from my balcony cabin. If they make an announcement that they spotted whales or bears, you can quickly just jump out on the balcony and look at them, of course, if they appear on the right side of the ship. Can you make a mistake by choosing the wrong side of the ship, though? That leads me on to the question, can you make a mistake by choosing the wrong side of the ship? In my view, it doesn't make a huge difference. However, if you're doing a north to south, I would tend to, if you're heading south, try and be on the left-hand side, the port side, because the land is on that side. And of course, if you're heading the other way, you go on the starboard or the right-hand side, so the land is on your side of the ship. On my last trip, I couldn't get a cabin on the left-hand port side for my north to south, and I did feel I missed out a little bit in some places because I didn't have the scenery, but it didn't make a massively huge difference. One mistake that I almost made on my first trip was around budgeting. There is a lot of extra costs you need to budget and build in if you're going to Alaska. I've already mentioned that you'll often find, on average for the cruise, you will be spending twice going to a busy area like, say, the Caribbean. Then you need to factor in, of course, onboard extras like gratuities, drinks, Wi-Fi, specialty dining, shopping, spa, casino. However, if you want to get the most out of Alaska, I do feel that you must spend on excursions. The towns themselves are interesting enough, but they're small. Skagway only has a population of between 800 and 1,000, and there's pretty much not much going on. Ketchikan is basically a bit of a tourist trap town filled with souvenir shops. Juneau has a bit more going on as it's the capital. But for all, the action is out of town and often involve float planes, helicopters, boats, and even trains, and those things cost. I recommend you try and budget to do a series of key things in Alaska. Now, I know everybody can't do this, but consider them. First of all, get up close to glaciers, walk on them, fly over them, go dog sledding on them, hike on them, or have a boat get you really close to them. Juneau is a fantastic place for that. I tend to do my glacier stuff here because you've got the Mendenhall Glacier and many other glaciers around here. I did a helicopter ride up to the Norris Glacier to go dog sledding, but that cost $600 last time. On my recent trip, I did a helicopter ride to walk on a glacier that was around $360. So these are insane amounts of money. You can though find cheaper options. I can get a local bus for $4 or $5 and then hike to the glacier. Ketchikan is another good place for glacier watching, where you can go on a float plane, for example, and fly over the misty fjords and see many glaciers. The second key activity to budget for, particularly if you're a wildlife fan, is to go whale and wildlife viewing. Whale watching excursions in all of these ports will cost you around about $150 or so to go out. That's a particular popular activity in Skagway and Ketchikan. The third activity I recommend you budget for is the White Pass and Yukon Railway in Skagway. The historic railway line, it was built to transport goods and ore when the gold rush started, but now it's purely for recreation. And it takes you high up into the mountain. It costs about $135 though per person. The fourth thing you may want to do is going eating and drinking. There are often salmon bakes, which can be a little bit touristy, but are great fun, or you can go to local breweries. And I must say, the best fish and chips I think I've ever had was when I was in Juneau at the Alaska Brew House. Amazing. If you're particularly active, then you're going to want to budget for some of the activity-based excursions like ziplining, kayaking, hiking. There are, though, very limited cultural immersion activities, and they are relatively inexpensive. In Ketchikan, you can go and explore totem poles and indigenous history. Of course, you should go to the Great Alaskan Lumberjack Show, which is a lot of fun, and that's about $30 or so. As these can all be so costly, you should cost out your different options. You can go with the cruise line, and I strongly recommend, whichever you do, book your excursions as far in advance as you can, because many will sell out. If they are sold out or the cruise line is too costly, look at independent providers like VentureAshore.com and ShoreExcursionsGroup.com. They will offer similar excursions, or you can simply wait until you get to port, because you'll find as you step off the ship, there are many booths on the quayside offering trips that you can just book there and then. I tend, though, to stick with either the cruise line ones or those through the independent providers, because I feel they're better screened. And of course, the cruise line will wait only for their excursions if running late. So make sure if you book with anyone other than the cruise line, you have plenty of time to get back to the ship. This brings me on to one topic that I know everyone going to Alaska makes a mistake with, no matter how experienced they are, in my experience. Everyone I spoke to on my last trip said they wish they'd brought something they'd left at home, and that includes me, no matter how well prepared you are. But let's talk about clothing first. Assume it will rain, and bring stuff to deal with that when you're on an excursion, walking about town, or even just standing out on deck, scenic viewing. Assume it's going to rain. A hooded jacket is best, though a portable umbrella is also a good idea. I sometimes take my waterproof trousers, though I've only used them once when I was out and it was raining on an excursion, but they're not essential. Next, assume when you're out in port or scenic cruising, you will be both really cold and really hot in one day and within hours of each other. And the best way to deal with that is packing and planning layers. I use the principle I was taught on expedition cruising: base layer, protection layer, and waterproof layer. For base layer, I pack my long johns, actually, thick woolen socks, and my long john style top. I only use these when I'm on excursions that land on a glacier. But for the rest of the days, my base layer is kind of jeans, t-shirt, or long sleeve top. I take a couple of options as my base layer. For the protection layer, I pack a couple of things: a fleece, a zippy top, and also a thick warm jumper. So again, I have some options based on how cold it is per day. I also take waterproof gloves, a scarf, and a warm beanie hat. I also did pack a puffy jacket, which I was glad for on one of the scenic cruising days and up on the glacier. So a number of different options of warmth, if you like. Then, of course, the waterproof layer I've already covered. Let me give you an example. In Juneau, I had all those layers on in the morning to fly and walk on the glacier. But when we returned by lunchtime, I was walking around in just a t-shirt with all of those layers that I spoke about in my rucksack, which, by the way, is a must bring to put your layers in before or in case you need them when you're out. Take a rucksack to pack those layers in. Make also sure that you bring sunglasses. It can be very bright, particularly if you're going onto glaciers. For the ship during the day, I just packed really casual gear: polo shirts, spare jeans, and of course my gym gear. I did pack a pair of smart non-jean slacks and a long-sleeved shirt for formal nights, though on Princess I actually didn't need to have those in the end. But of course, in theory, on Princess, jeans are not supposed to really be worn in the dining room, and some lines are a little bit stricter. Though in Alaska, despite the dress code you'll find it is much more relaxed than normal, but just pack an option or two. If you want to know more about Alaska cruising, watch this video where I dive in detail about what it's like cruising in Alaska, starting with the biggest surprise I had and why, if I go to Alaska again, I will absolutely repeat it. See you over there.